Hey, it's Foreclosure Girl Boss. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you see some videos before, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you guys about owner occupants versus investors. Owner occupants versus investors when it comes to buying these REO properties. And yes, there is a difference. So it's super important for you as an investor that's looking to buy REO properties to know that the seller of these properties, whoever that may be, it could be the bank, it could be a hedge fund, it could be a corporation, it could be a government entity. So whoever's selling these REO properties or whoever's selling the REO property that you want to put your offer in on, it's super important for you to know that they're typically going to classify the buyers in two separate categories. Are they an owner occupant, meaning that they're going to own and occupy the property, meaning that they're going to own and live in the property? Or are they an investor? Are they an investor looking to buy the property? And typically they're going to either fix it up and resell it, or they're going to fix it up and rent it out. Typically make a profit on the property, okay? So there's two different categories, owner occupants and investors. And a lot of the banks, a lot of the sellers of these REO properties, whether that's again the bank, corporation, hedge fund, government entity, a lot of them prefer to sell to someone who's going to live in the property. They prefer to sell it to someone who's going to live in the property. Why? Because it helps the community. They feel like if a person is going to buy the property and live in it, then them buying a foreclosure property can help them build the equity, build sweat equity, as they call it. All right. So I know some of you might be saying, well, investors help the community too. And yes, you do. Yes, you do. When an investor buys a property, rehabs it, and resells it, it helps the community. It helps the value of the community. So I agree with that 1,000%. But I want to tell you what the seller of that REO property is thinking, okay? So they show preference a lot of times between, over the investors with an owner occupant. So if you're going to live in a property, a lot of times they'll show preference with that offer. Not all, but sometimes. And typically in that contract, you're going to see where there's different verbiage for investors and different verbiage for owner occupants. Because like I said, you're going to fall into one or two categories. Either you're going to live in that house when you buy it, or you're going to fix up and flip it, or you're going to buy it whole. So either you're an owner occupant or an investor. And again, you're going to be treated differently if you're an investor. So, and I think I'm going to pause for a second because I think this is a great time to kind of add in a PSA, a public service announcement. Don't lie, guys. I said this on one of my other videos, but this is a great point right now to stress the importance of not lying on these offers, because the banks will show preference to owner occupants sometimes, and because there are certain guidelines for investors versus owner occupants sometimes, and because sometimes the rate is better and the down payment may be less, sometimes investors will lie on these contracts so that they can get their offer accepted. And what I mean by that is there'll be a REO property that'll show preference to an owner occupant, and the investor will submit an offer stating that they're going to live in that property, knowing full well that they're not going to live in the property, that they're going to fix and flip it and turn it for a profit. Don't do that, guys. Don't do that. If you want to level up and buy these foreclosures like a boss, then you want to do things that are above board. Do things above board. Do things the right way. There's so many ways out here to make money buying investment properties than to lie on your offer. And banks a lot of times will, they have ways of finding out whether or not you're living in that property or not. So if your file gets audited and they find out that you're not living in the property, that's not going to be good for you. That's just not going to be good for you. It's not going to turn out well for you. So don't do it. Don't do it. I don't care how good the property is, I don't care how much of a profit you can make on it, that profit's not going to do any good in jail. All right. the the process that you're going to have to go through if you're found to be committing mortgage fraud is just not worth it. It's just not worth it, guys. So again, if you are an investor and you know that you're going to fix and flip this property, or you're going to buy and hold, but anyway, you're not going to live in the property as an owner occupant, then don't lie on the offer and say that you are. Don't do it. You may be tempted, but don't do it. Okay. PSA over. I think you get the point. All right. So again, like I said, they may show preference for owner occupants over investors. Like for instance, some sellers actually have an owner occupant period where only owner occupants can bid on a property before investors. So they may call it like a first look period, an owner occupant initiative period, but something along those lines. But pretty much it'll state that they're giving preference to owner occupants. They want you to know that owner occupants can bid on those properties at that time. And it may be for 5 days, it may be for 10 days, maybe for 15 days. And it'll say only owner occupant offers accepted during this time. So what they're trying to do, guys, they're trying to see if they can sell the house first to owner occupant and give them a chance without competing against an investor to buy that property. All right? So they're giving the owner occupants a chance, someone who's going to live in that property. They want to see, okay, let's kind of gauge the interest of buyers who are going to live in it. And then if we don't get any offers within the 5, 10, or 15 days, then we'll add investors to the mix. But for right now, we only want to see offers from owner occupants. That's why I said sometimes investors will lie. Well, they'll just slide their offer in there during the owner occupant period. And that's when I said don't do that. So anyway, so that's one way that they may show preference to an owner occupant versus an investor. They may give owner occupants time to put their offer in first. All right. Another way they may show preference could be your EMD, your earnest money deposit. Your earnest money deposit is the amount that you have to put down with that property, typically with your offer. All right. And some of those sellers of these REO properties will have one requirement of an earnest money deposit from owner occupants, and they may have another requirement for investors. For instance, some sellers, if you're an investor putting an offer on one of their properties, you have to put down 10% earnest money deposit. So if that property is $100,000, then you're putting down $10,000 as an earnest money deposit with your offer. And someone who's going to live in it, an owner occupant, they may only have to put down $500 or $1,000. All right. Some sellers, depending upon how the investor is paying, will depend upon how much money they have to put down. It may be 5% if they're getting financing, and it may be 10% if they're paying cash. So again, it will still vary because you are an investor. So as you can see, one set of rules for owner occupants, one set of rules for investors. And some other things you got to look out for is like inspections, inspection periods, closing time frames, and things of that nature. So again, it's super, super important as an investor to know that there is a difference when you're putting in an offer on an REO property, whether you're an investor or whether you're an owner occupant. When you're buying a regular resale property, there may be some things in that contract that may be different for owner occupants versus investors. But typically, the built-in contract that agents use doesn't really differentiate it too much. There may be some things that you might have to write in there and add in there as an investor to customize that offer. But typically, there's not too much built-in language in an offer for a regular traditional resale property between an owner occupant and an investor. But for REO property, there most certainly is. All right. So you'll see the verbiage in their contract. Or sometimes what they'll do is they'll have your agent submit a contract on whatever your agent's MLS forms are, and then they'll come in with their own forms that attaches to that. So again, just be super, super careful, guys. Like I said, as an investor, you want to make sure, hey, what can I do as an investor? What's allowed as an investor? What are they looking for me to do as an investor? All right. And then make sure you don't get caught up in that whole, well, it's the owner occupant period. I want to slide my offer in and out like an owner occupant so that I can get the deal. Again, don't do it. So anyway, hopefully this video helped you out and help to show you how there's differences between owner occupants and investors when you're putting in your offers on these REO properties. All right, toodles, guys.